Clean that seed.
Clean that seed.
Clean that seed. That's the key. You can't have too much pulp on the seed.
We're going to talk about some Pawpaw Permaculture. Biological intelligence, BI. They are watching out for you.
Picking up pawpaws, put them in a basket. Picking up pawpaws, put them in a basket. Picking up pawpaws, put them in a basket. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Come on, friends, let's go find them. Let's go, friends, let's go find them. Come on, friends, let's go find them. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Where is Susie? Tell me, oh, where is Susie?
Wake the farm up. What's up, everybody? Pawpaw Festival 2024 down here. Getting good things happening. We're going to talk about some Pawpaw Permaculture. Perfect.
All right, we're cutting in with Chris Chmiel, founder of the Pawpaw Festival. Dear friend to Wake the Farm Up. Let's go. I'm having one right now.
I mean, when you have one, the lady behind you. You may like them, you may not, but it's just like strawberry or banana, everybody doesn't like everything. That's what makes the world go round. So anyways, we're going to talk about some Pawpaw Permaculture kind of stuff, and then we're going to go and wander over here to look at some pawpaws that are growing here wild. I went to Ohio University, right over here in Athens, and made my own major, and it was called Holistic Transition to Sustainability. And basically, I wanted to do something with my livelihood that I felt good about, and luckily enough, I had a counselor that told me about this idea of making my own major, and it was probably one of the best things I ever did because it just sort of set me on a path, and along the way, the pawpaws and I kind of intersected. I was studying Spanish in Mexico, and I was eating this fruit down there called soursop. I don't know if you guys have ever had a soursop.
Yes, I've had.
Yeah, and I was like, these are great, they're like making juices and stuff with them, and they have these big seeds like pawpaws, and I was like, wow, those look like pawpaw seeds. And so it just kind of got me thinking about the whole idea of what are we doing with our pawpaws, because like right around this area, southeastern Ohio, southern Ohio, other parts of the country, there are literally millions of pawpaw trees. So I'd be going out on a hike in the hills, and I'd run upon these areas where there'd just be pawpaws just rotting on the ground everywhere, and I just thought it was a shame that we weren't doing anything with them. And in our town, we have this community kitchen, and that was a great asset because I guess my mindset was one of the biggest challenges for pawpaws is the short shelf life. They go from hard as a rock to, kind of horrible looking and rotten in a couple days. So I proposed that we needed to process pawpaws and make them more available year-round. If people were really going to, incorporate pawpaws into their diet. So that's kind of one of the big things that we worked on is processing pawpaws. So we take the skins off, we take the seeds out, and we freeze it. And our company is called Integration Acres. And, in our best year, we've done about 12,000 pounds of frozen pawpaw. And a lot of that is done by hand. And I hire a bunch of ladies from Meigs County down here. I call them the desperate housewives of Meigs County. And we get together and we wash the fruit, we take the skins off, and then we have a machine that helps take the seeds out, and we freeze it. And that's what makes things like the pawpaw beer possible, all these food vendors using pawpaw pulp. And, you know, this year's kind of, we're in this exceptional drought down here. And this year's the earliest that we've ever, you know, harvested and processed so much before the festival. Usually we're like getting into it right when the festival starts, but in this year we're going to be pretty much done. So after, which is going to be nice, a little different. So anyways, I had been out west, and out west there's a lot of foraging that happens. They have wild mushroom foragers, and kind of took some of those models of, you know, basically like utilizing our natural resources here, and I put a bounty on pawpaws. So I put an ad in the paper. This is like 30 years ago, and I said, you know, pawpaws 50 cents a pound. And I got calls from a lot of little old ladies, and their husbands had planted these trees in their backyard, and they don't really like them. And their husbands had passed away, but if I wanted the pawpaws, they would gladly, you know, let me have them. So I met a lot of nice little old ladies, Bessie and Esther, and
want some pawpaws?
Different folks from around the neighborhoods, and that's how we started. But there was a couple guys that had lived out west, and they started showing up with like truckloads of pawpaws. So that was pretty cool. So we saw the potential. You know, and we've learned a lot over the years of processing and such, and like how, you know, it just has to happen. And the festival kind of came up because the village of Albany over here wanted to figure out a way to bring people to Albany. And so I think we have successfully done that. We're just outside of Albany, but if you guys get a chance to go in Albany, it's a nice little quaint little village. And their official village tree is the pawpaw. And, you know, we try to plant pawpaws in Albany, too.
Official.
So I'm rambling. But if anybody has some random questions, of course, this weekend you're going to have a lot of opportunities to learn about pawpaws here in the Pawpaw Tent. Dr. Rob Brannon, he's a nutritionist at Ohio University. He's coordinates this tent. And a couple of his grad students are here to coordinate that. So I'm just going to keep rambling unless people have any questions. Okay, yes?
Can you freeze pawpaws? Freeze dry?
Oh, okay. No, freeze drying is not a good idea. In fact, drying is not a good idea. And this gets a little complicated, but there's these really powerful chemicals inside of pawpaws. They're called Anynonymous acetogenins.
Let's get into it.
And they're using them in various medicinal ways. They tried to do this. They're like a natural pesticide. Pawpaws are generally resistant to bugs. They have a few, but
can't tap
generally
them.
They don't.
We'll try to put a wire on them.
That's because of those powerful chemicals. And unfortunately what happens, and I've eaten a lot of pawpaws, but a guy that worked for us made this incredible pawpaw, you know, fruit leather. You know, looked amazing, tastes amazing, but it made me nauseous. You know, so it makes people nauseous. You get OD on this Anynonymous acetogenins. There was a professor from Purdue University named Dr. Jerry McLaughlin. He had been to the Pawpaw Festival previously. He worked his whole career on isolating those chemicals and using them in a anti-cancer fighting thing as well. So they had a lice shampoo, and then they also had this thing they call a cell regulator. So that's utilizing those Anynonymous acetogenins, but when you dry them, you may get sick, and it doesn't feel great. It won't kill you. They did these experiments, Dr. McLaughlin did, and they couldn't kill things, but they would make them really sick. So it's not fun. Has anybody ever OD'd on that stuff? Yeah, not great. Yes, sir.
So would you freeze dry and then rehydrate? It still won't, I mean, because you know I'm talking about freeze drying?
Yeah,
So
that's...
it freezes it, takes all the moisture out, and then it's like...
things happening in Mother Earth News Tent. I'm Andy the Elf, your host, Wake the Farm Up. We got some mics up here. You know, I'm going to be encouraging people to get on the mic in this conversation. If anybody's got words to say, we value what you got to say on this show, you know. I'm Andy the Elf. I talk a lot on this show, so I hear myself talk a lot. So definitely squirrely, got my ears up, want to hear about what you got to say. You know, today, this is Wake the Farm Up, Maintaining Ground live show podcast. Plant and biological intelligence. The semiosis of pawpaws. The semiosis, we'll get into what that is. And diverse biological doctrine of signatures, yo. You know what doctrine of signatures are? Yeah. Yeah, look at all these plant people coming in here to this festival. Like, they got their doctrine of signatures. I love the word signatures. It's two of my favorite words. It's got sign and nature. Put those together. Semiosis is the study of signs in the language of things that aren't with words, you know, those connections and communications between things. So, you know what we're getting into. I've had several people tell me, they're like, well, wait, what does that even mean? And I'm like, well, why don't you come down and check it out and we'll explore what that means. So, yeah, this is an audio recording too. So you guys know, like, there's no video happening in these recordings. You can find more Wake the Farm Up episodes. I got some cool free stickers up here at the table close to the microphone. These stickers are usually about $500 a piece, but today I'm giving them out for free. You can even take 2 or 3 if you want, if you got some friends. I mean, that's a special deal. Just think about all that savings, you know, $500. That's a lot of savings. So what are you going to spend it on this weekend at the Pawpaw Festival? You know, you got to think about what you do with your savings. We're also going to get into how we, receive oracles of wisdom from plants and connect with them. How are they biologically, intelligently communicating and connecting with us? I mean, for me, pawpaws go deep on that story. We're going to explore how do plants, funguses, lichens, insects, animals, bacteria, and all biological life communicate with each other as well. Oh my goodness. All right, so you guys ready to get into this? You're just like curious? You feeling confidently curious or just a little curious?
We are pawpaw curious.
I like that. That's one of my favorites. Let's grow.
We know that Elf is at a festival, so this episode is probably going to jump around a bit. Please be ready.
Okay. So, again, I'm going to be encouraging people that have things that they want to share. So, I got to go with a little question just to, like, feel where we're at. Like, how many people feel like plants and other biological life are as intelligent, perhaps, as humans are? You guys feel like that? I see some head shoulders. Like, do you feel like humans are like the apex of evolution or, biological creation? Not so much that either, huh? Well, okay. I like that. Like, we got a pretty open, space around in here. So let's explore this. How can plants tell us that they're intelligent? So for me, growing up, in these different times, I'd hear about plants that could speak with you and plants that could communicate with you. And some of them, they're like, oftentimes you go and research this topic and it leads you into psychedelic plants, which reminds me, I gotta turn on my cool little, just because you have to have cool, like, displays on the screen, So our audio listeners won't be able to get to see that, but that's the whole entire matrix of biology right there behind me. So we'll just let that keep going behind there. It'll change in different colors because that's how nature works, with the different oxidization and different things that happen as layers emerge. All right, so where was I again? So we have these plants, they're smart, they're intelligent, and then there's these like psychedelic plants, like they'll tell you about, all these older books would tell me about how plants were smart because of that. And it's fascinating how the science is catching up to it now. You can even learn about it and think about it and connect with other plants. Like, how many of you guys are familiar with the sensitive plant? Yeah, You know that one? Yeah, it's like, to me, I can really relate to that. You know, it's like sometimes like somebody just like comes up and abrasively like bumps into you, and you just like, you just kind of like tighten up. Well, these like scientisty people, you know, they went and gave them some local anesthesia, and they found out that they weren't so sensitive anymore. So to me, that's really curious. It's like, okay, they gave them a nervine that cooled them out and made them be okay with being brushed with a little finger. There's some kind of intelligent reaction that happens here. And even though they don't have a central brain, there's still some sort of sense of feel. You know, there's people that have described that plants have 26 different kinds of senses, you know, like where they say we have like, I don't know, how many senses do you say humans have in general? I don't know, like 5? And they're like hearing, seeing, tasting, touching, and smelling. And I usually add a few more on, like humor, awareness. You know, there's a lot of these other senses that we start to develop. And a lot of it does happen, though, from those other 5 senses, I guess, where we're getting like the smell. We're receiving a chemical neuron connection that's making us interpret it in a certain way. So that's where the semiosis comes in, the sign reading. You know, how are you reading things that aren't words? Have you guys ever read things that aren't words? Like you just kick back and read a book in a cloud or something, you know, floating by? I'm talking about real clouds right now, too. That's doing some little echo effect on me. But I like that, it's like dub. So you guys, you know, so what you're seeing here, we're starting to see things like Venus flytraps and these other things that move are being able to connect and show us. I mean, the Venus flytrap, they can hear one another. Flytrap snaps closed, like the other ones hear that little sound, they sense it, they can pick that up. Now you get into these plants, they're tapping things down into the roots. Like what we see and where we get to exist is just like a fragment of the world in which these plants are getting to interact. Underneath in the soil, there's so much going on. There's so many interactions and chemical exchanges. If a plant is needing a certain nutrient, it'll express that into the soil in different channels of mycelium, worms, microbials, all the different things will either 1, work together to help that plant out, or 2, kick it out. I mean, it's like a 50-50 thing, you know? It's like you ever lose your wallet and you're like looking for it and you're panicking and you're going through all the different scenarios of what could happen. Like maybe I won't find it and I'll have to go get this and but ultimately there's a certain point where you got to just be like, it's a 50-50. I'm either going to find it or I'm not, right? So that's what these plants are doing. They're under there, you know, and they're above the ground as well. You know, it's the whole branches, the roots and the trunk thing. You know, I love like the idea of like, let's go back to our roots, but let's like also go back to our branches, and let's also remember that bridge between them, the trunk. So that brings me back to this plant sensation. Where is their brain? A lot of people say like, where is their brain? I mean, you can cut a tree and it'll sprout back up. So that, you know, concept of where its brain is, maybe it's like mixed out throughout the whole entire thing. There's other comparisons in like plant tissue. The plant tissue, like you guys have seen how a sunflower will turn its head and watch the sun. The really cool thing is the next morning, it's already like, it remembers where the sun is. It has like memory, and it'll turn its head back the other way. And with modern cool things like the time-lapse photography, we can really watch plants move and animate in a way that we've never been able to before. So that really allows us to experience these plants as living things. You can film your sunflower plant in your yard and then watch it like 2-minute clip of it. It'll be just as satisfying and as adorable as watching your puppy turn its head. You know, it's like, it's alive. And the plant tissue that's inside there that's making it move is very, very similar to muscle. We just can't seem to call plant tissue muscle. It's kind of would be confusing. There'd be some people perhaps like in their different diet programs and their different verbiages where that might be an error, like that would cause like a serious like error at some point. And so like with that, you know, being said, there's like this whole aspect of how you're observing these things, and to look at science how we know it. You guys familiar with taxonomy? How many people love taxonomy? It's pretty cool stuff, right? I love it because I'm a nerd. But it's also like a lot of times when you love something, you can also like learn why you totally dislike it very passionately too, because it really it breaks everything up in a very organizable, learnable fashion, but it kind of separates all of life as well too. So for me with my glasses, when I take them off, it's like that whole concept, all is one, is so easy to see. It's like a Claude Monet. You guys look like beautiful colors and movement of energy. Like I can tell there's like some flower energy over here, from this guy's shirt. Just like, it's all one though. And then, because of science, they told us 2020 is the correct version. I'm still researching, trying to figure out who decided that. I like diversity. Wouldn't it be cool if we had more diversity in how we actually physically are seeing the world around us and be able to describe that to each other? So,
Chmiel continued.
When you're here, you
Unknown
can sample
question.
different varieties.
So they are going to have it here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the North American pawpaw growers tent will have different varieties.
They will.
I have varieties,
Yeah,
but
do.
I'm also very supportive of the biodiversity in our area.
Yeah.
Back in 1916, the American Genetic Association had this competition for the best pawpaws. And pawpaws are native to 26 states east of the Mississippi. And people were sending them in
Who's
from
gonna win?
Michigan to Louisiana.
Who's gonna win?
And 5 out of the top 10 best
5.
pawpaws
5.
came from southern Ohio.
What?
So for whatever reason, I think we're blessed with pawpaws here.
What?
I think
Yeah.
people who sell varieties tend to have this mindset that you gotta have a cultivar. But me personally, I'm not inclined to say that. I think that's an option. You're gonna get a variety that is standard. Do we want to go down the same path of all the other fruits and limit our biodiversity? I don't.
No.
I don't think that's great. I think we should be open to all these different varieties. We have an unlimited potential of varieties. Anytime you plant a seed, you have a potential new variety. So you could, do cross-pollination of different ones that you like and keep breeding new ones. So I sort of resist the idea that you have to have these cultivars. That's where I'm at. If you want to come over and taste these wild pawpaws,
Yeah, he's the man.
I would like you to come over to our booth and try them.
Pawpaw.
We're over at Integration Acres over there. And,
They're all headed
in
over there
Asian
now.
countries, wild fruit is more highly valued. So I think it's up to you to decide how you want to go on your pawpaw journey. So, yes, sir.
but it's all about the signs. So the semiosis, the semiosis is the reading of understanding of signs that don't have words. So for me, without my glasses on, I can function very well in a forest. There's so many things going around. As soon as I walk into a city though, I can't read any of the signs that are around me that say words itself, you know what I mean? Like that kind of sign. Like over here it says Pawpaw tent. I might have went over there and thought it was the persimmon tent. I don't know. I might have even thought I was at the Persimmon Festival pulling in because I wouldn't have been able to read the sign. So yeah, it is great to throw these glasses on to be able to read the human signs. So there's a concept of plant blindness. Have you guys ever heard of plant blindness? It's a concept that more and more people are coming into existence on this earth where they don't even see the plants around them, much less not know what their names are or what they do for you or could do for you or how they connect with humans throughout the last 100,000 years of connecting with our ecosystem. So there's this whole plant blindness, it's where plants aren't just imagine all your friends around you, but all of a sudden you're not friends with them, right? You're just they're just like some backdrop while I sit here on my porch and go over my itinerary and check my calendar and make sure my appointments are all right. you can do that and like acknowledge all of your other friends around you too, and just like there's definitely that possibility. It's like when you're driving along the highway, is there a green blur going by you, or are you like, oh look, there's some autumn olives and there's a little red speck. Oh look, oh there's that. Oh look, there's that. You can't help it. All of a sudden, like, you know, the more you connect with it and get excited about seeing these different entities that are living in this ecosystem with you, the more you'll be able to read the sign. The signs, the semiosis of plants is fascinating. The signs of nature, there's like certain insects that will have certain colors to attract things to them, but they're poisonous, and it's like a trick, you know, it's like a trick sign, and that's still converting a message, whether it's tricking you or not. And we see a lot of that too in, you know, the commercial advertising world and propaganda and all the different things, right? Appreciate y'all. Enjoy the science. And there's a whole aspect of reading these signs, you know, like you might interpret it in certain ways, and it all has to do with, I mean, we're all moving through a systematic, like, programming from thousands of years of how we think, how we approach this, how we view that. And if we're ever going to see it in a different way and actually see what some of these plants are telling us, see what some of these creatures are telling us, the bacterias, all these things, you know, like I was mentioning, like early in this talk, we were talking about, you know, humans maybe, like, do you guys think maybe they're the apex of biological life on Earth? And, you know, we had some, and, you know, if an alien came to me right now and said, take me to your leader, I would be like, hey, there's some pretty cool bacteria up in the isosphere. Did you check in with them on the way down? You know, like, if they weren't up there, we wouldn't be right here. None of this would be happening. You know, there's so many amazing things, like bacteria, like, they created agriculture hundreds of thousand years before humans did. Ants created agriculture hundreds of thousand years before people did. You know, it's like really cool that we created it. You know, at least, like, you know, it's like our anthrocentric way of thinking, you know, like the way the world is because of this or that. You know, maybe climate change is because of people. I don't know, I'm just like, I'm going into this story, you know, maybe the signs are actually saying that, like, it's, you know, it's not, this whole climate change isn't because of people. Maybe there's some, you know, biological entity from another planet that's coming to terraform this to make it more favorable for it. Ever think of that? I don't know, it's kind of crazy, but, you know.
The process is that they're going to just go as fast as possible, as quick as possible. It's like hitting the buffet at Ryan's, if those still exist. You're going to get to the crab legs right away, right? And then you're going to go back for the other stuff that you want to have, but you're not nearly as invested in as those crab legs. So that's what your yeast and your bacteria do. They just take that glucose and they rip it as fast as possible to ethanol or lactic acid or acetic acid, and they're not very efficient with it. They're making things like acetaldehyde, and they're doing things like esters that, like isoamyl acetate, that makes things taste like bananas. They're making all these things. Diacetyl, which is fake popcorn butter flavor. It's making all those compounds, but if you give it enough time, it'll run out of food, easy snack food like glucose, and come back around and clean up those diacetyls and acetaldehydes and finish the process. Because somewhere along the way, about here or so, we get one part of the energy of this conversion, and then here is where we get this last part of the energy conversion. So in between these steps is byproducts that they can clean up to try to recoup some more energy, but it's not nearly as efficient for the cells. They're going to skip that stuff. This is a long way of saying what's important to you is that if you smell things that smell like pineapples or pears or green apple, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a part of the process. And if you don't like it, like diacetyl or acetaldehyde, or even some sulfur-containing compounds, they'll clean themselves up given enough time. So patience with fermentation.
Patience.
From my classes. If anybody's ever interested, we usually get together at the United Campus Ministry in Athens on Wednesday. from 7 to 8:30. We're just downstairs. It's $15. And we were running through a bunch of different West African traditional rhythms that are people in my class. It's so nice that people haven't seen you for a long time. See these rhythms are still in your head, at least enough in your body to be able to play something that fits in. So it's good. We're gonna do what I call a rolling drum circle. So I'll just start. I'll start playing a random thing. And I do this to them sometimes. They gotta just fit in. So we'll go both directions. I'll start playing, and then we'll just let the rhythm go around. And maybe we'll just follow this. You know, it's already rocking. I want to see how the rhythm goes as we fill in. Here we go.
That's what science is all about, finding these questions, and like some of the science stuff, you know, you can't prove it wrong. I don't know, it's like, are we terraforming it for ourselves for air-conditioned housing? You know, like maybe, I don't know. It's interesting. So, Pawpaw Festival here, and I want to get into, you know, I got microphones up here, so definitely want to encourage anybody that's got something to like share into the Wake the Farm Up podcast. This is recording right now. Again, I hear myself talk a lot. I want to hear what you guys have to say, but I'm going to be around this whole festival catching people that are sharing some amazing things. Pawpaw though, the pawpaw, the semiosis, like, has pawpaws ever communicated to you guys, like, and like said anything, you know, like, I'm not like necessarily saying again, you know, with words, but like maybe they came up like, hey, wait, what are you doing? I'm a pawpaw tree over here. How did you just walk on by there? You know, like, how did pawpaws come to you? You know, there is something very desirable about them. They fit right into your hand. To me, that's a sign. They taste good. To me, that's a sign. They have like all these amazing properties to them. They make you feel good. That's a sign. But all of a sudden, like, what other signs are they telling us? Like pawpaws, there's a time of abundance around them, a temporal abundance. Temporarily, there's as many pawpaws as you want. And every year I go and this is not pulp fiction at all, but I pulp all my pawpaws down and I put them in my freezer, and then there they sit until next year for pawpaw season. Why? Because they're my pawpaws. I don't want to like be without them, so I keep them in my freezer, but I hardly ever, like, I'll be honest, like pull it out, because my favorite time to eat a pawpaw is when it's warm under a pawpaw tree, you know, and I try to preserve that experience for other people, but that just hasn't like been the thing that really works for me, because it's not exactly the full experience. If I can bring you guys to a pawpaw tree to eat one, if you've never had one before, you'll that's a whole nother experience than even a refrigerated one. You might find one at a farmer's market refrigerated, and that's awesome, but it's not going to be as good as that one that you picked that's like from that really, really, really good tree that you like.
Back there.
Yeah, I got a question for you. Can you describe to us, perhaps poetically, the first pawpaw you ever had, and then follow that up with the last one you ate?
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
So his question was about my first pawpaw and my most recent pawpaw. You know, and I'm not 100% sure when I ate my first pawpaw, but it was probably hiking around in these hills. I went, like I said, I went to college at Ohio University, probably out at Stroud's Run, you know, which is a state lake, you know, it was probably just like out there and seeing them rotting on the ground, smelling the fragrance, and being like, hey, I'm gonna eat this, and it's amazing, you know? So I had a ceremonial, ritualistic pawpaw this morning.
Nice.
Because I sort of like live that way a little bit, and you know, getting through this festival is always like sort of intense. So this morning was a beautiful sunrise, and I ate a pawpaw, and I just kind of, you know, communed with the pawpaw, and thank Pawpaw for everything it's done for me. And, thinking about all of the trees that are growing all over the country, all over the world, I was sort of imagining the roots growing down in the trees, and then thinking about all the people that are eating the fruit. So I really do see this festival as sort of a spiritual, higher actualization thing for me. It's a big part of my life. So thank you for coming again.
Hey!
And, yes, sir.
Yeah, that was fun. Somebody's asking a question.
Wholesale processing of the pulp. We'll touch on
practical.
Right.
Get into the practical.
Some people use the Victorio strainer concept, but I'm fond of the mesh bag, which is like your typical citrus or onion bag. You just kind of, we kind of break the pawpaws in half and just squish them out, and that's our technical term, squishing.
Squishing.
And you kind of gather an amount of that, and then you use those mesh bags. And if you really, really want to get your seeds clean, that's probably not the best way to do it, but you're going to get most of your pulp out. It's pretty efficient. That's my recommendation.
Nice.
On home processing. Yes, ma'am.
Keep that at home.
Okay, so pawpaws and permaculture. I guess I was always fond of pawpaws because they're a native plant.
Hey.
And one of the ways that I really took advantage of those Anynonymous acetogenins was I used grazing animals to help me manage my pawpaws. So deer, goats. So I had a herd of goats, and we milked the goats. We had goat cheese, but we would use our goats to eat things like multiflora rose, the grasses, whatever. Pawpaws are fly pollinated, so having animals around, you have manure and you have more flies. That also helps fertilize the soil. So that silvopastoralism is sort of what I think is a great way to manage your pawpaws. When I first started, I was going out, because people see pawpaws in the woods, and I sent that little brochure around, and they're like, I don't get any fruit, or I only get a couple. And then there's all these people growing pawpaws in orchards. So I guess what I was doing was like sort of a blend of those things. And then along the way, I would go to people's properties, people with horses or cows, and then I went to these people with goats. And like all that was left in their pasture were pawpaw trees. And I was like, oh, that's pretty amazing. So I had actually been working on a dairy farm with cows. And when the trees are big, cows are fine. But when the trees are small, cows could kind of just step on them, and then you're like, ah. So goats are a little more tiptoey. But goats can do things like rub their heads on them. So it's not like a perfect system, but it does pretty good when it comes to things like goats eat the multiflora rose, which is very prickly, and if you're trying to pick pawpaws and you're full of multiflora rose, that pretty much sucks. So that's my main example of pawpaws and permaculture is utilizing that animals thing, and that's because of those Anynonymous acetogenins. Nope. Deer don't eat them. So,
not even the fruit.
They'll eat. The deer will eat a little bit. They're not huge eaters. They might take a bite. Yes, ma'am.
So for me, pawpaws came in high school. I was actually learning another language. I was in a Spanish class, and my Spanish teacher decided that he would take us mushroom foraging, and we found pawpaw trees. And that was like when I first heard about these things. And I ate as many of them as I could. Then I looked for them for a year, until I realized they only come in that little time period, right? But they started giving signs to me. They started telling me things. I've heard people here at the Pawpaw Festival refer to them as one of the forgotten fruits. Of course, that's not our experience here. Like here, it's like the opposite of that. It's like the remembered fruit. And these plants have been talking with people for eons, right? People have eaten them in the Ohio River Valley for eons, right? I mean, that's what we know. I mean, sure, I don't have a time machine traveling thing to go back in time to really travel and really decide, if that's literally what happened, but I'm going to go with that. It makes sense. And, we explore what we know and can find out what we know about them. And it's amazing. These signs, first, 30 years ago, everybody's telling me that they only grew next to creeks or in the deep shade of the forest. And I started noticing that they would only have large amounts of fruit if a really big tree fell down around them in the deep forest. And then I started planting them out in the sunshine and connecting with other people that were planting them out in the sunshine. And I feel like just even in the last 30 years, more people have really realized how much the pawpaw wants to integrate with people, not just be a wild plant by itself. It's going to be fine. It'll be fine. It's shown us that. It's done several hundred years of not having people interaction because people were way too busy fighting over each other or getting way into the economics about how they couldn't have it all year long, so why bother with it or whatever. And then it became poor man's banana, and then recently, it became $80 a pound on New York City streets. What? You're gonna call that poor man's banana? I mean, that's 2 pawpaws? You guys know how much a pound of pawpaw? Maybe 3 if they're medium size. So yeah, these things were just talking to me and telling me their own thing, while the people of tenor, the people of schooled knowledge of these things, and I had to put into a little thought into this. How is this happening? How are these different things being told to me by these plants? I digged into it, and realized it's because they want to. They want to talk to us. They feel nice to walk in the summer, the cool leaves as they brush against your skin. They're a pleasurable plant to be around. They taste good. I mean, they're amazing. And then they're just this cordage. You can tie things. There's just so many connections into it, right? So these things were telling me yeah, people really need to connect with this and other plants too. Meanwhile, being aware that this plant's connecting and talking with other creatures and other species and all these things too. It's not just our own little vector here. Oh, we got Pawpaw Hawaii shirt. Brother, welcome up to the mic. Come up. You got a question, comment, jump in here. This is number 3, I think. You need to get up in there a little bit closer, I guess.
Isn't it true that pawpaws are pollinated by flies? Usually, when you think of isn't it true that pawpaws are pollinated by flies? And when you think of flies, what attracts flies is dead things or rotten things, right? So they're communicating with everything else around them, and I understand that the Native Americans used to put dead fish or dead animals around the pawpaws to attract the pollinators to make more pawpaw fruit. You know what? You have any?
I'm not sure about any documentation on how they would work with the dead animals around the trees themselves. I've never done that, and I feel like they have a lot of success. The flies are there. I feel that the flies are super fly. I mean, it's a great one. I know that I like to make artwork where people are saying save the bees, they pollinate everything. I like making one that says save the superfly, it pollinates pawpaws and other things. And that's a special thing, honestly, that they get pollinated by a fly. I know I have heard over the years a lot of people hanging meat and different things to attract flies and whatnot. I don't know if you always really need to do it. It's the flies, it depends on where you are. I'm connected to a lot of ecosystems where flies can naturally find things like that. So maybe if you're in a farm field that's isolated by large cut down forests, they're just corn and soybean around you, you might want to do that to attract more flies. I don't really know, but it's definitely one of those whimsical folklore things to do, and I encourage trying it. I like maybe just to mix in, poured bucket, like with holes in it, porous, and you can put the meat in there, right? And then hang that in your chicken coop, so when they're making maggots, they like drop out and they feed your chickens like a GMO-free, protein-rich food, but it's also got the flies around there. A lot of my pawpaw trees are near goat and chicken like sites, so I feel like maybe there is something there, but when they are pollinating, there's not as many things that are requiring fly pollination right at that moment, I guess, so they get pretty busy on it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I wonder if I attract flies and if that helps, it's like, so maybe just take less showers during pawpaw season and, just like dance through the pawpaws. And it's, like you're saying though, about how the flowers attract the fly. That's another sign. That's a semiosis of pawpaws. That's a good example of how they're communicating to another species, by attracting flies, specifically by having that little stinky flower that, when you look up at it close, it almost even looks like a little tiny skiver of meat, like the little fleshy meat, really rare. It's pretty, even if smells bad, good. Like some of those are choices that we get to make along the way. I'm the kind of person that really likes the way that ginkgo fruit smells. I don't know if you guys have ever smelled ginkgo fruit, but we're all taught to be like, no, that's awful. And I also like to eat durian fruit. A lot of people can't hang with that. That's like a subtropical or a pure tropical fruit. They smell really bad and they're not allowed in airports in the countries where they are. And they'll have whole signs about it. Again, signs everywhere, signs. Knock it out my head or something.
We have about 10 minutes.
Yeah, thank you.
We definitely keep playing.
Just like watching orange whenever you
All right, so currently right now, I'm kicking it with Gallagher. He's been playing it loud. Gallagher and the elf haven't got to sit and share stories and poetry in a while. Gallagher is somebody that inspired elf, definitely deeply rooted in the word spoken power flows of speaking with words and working with them, and haven't connected in real life or even on any of the digital life either. It's so beautiful that we connected back together in an organic, hey, there you are. Yeah. So, needless to say, I'm going to turn the mic over to Gallagher right now. He's going to share a piece called The Leaf. No, edit, cut.
Seminole 3. Ocean's goddess of nudity. Strips nude at 3. Dancing golden electricity down every third wave of laughing, licking foam. In the sea of math's elementary, 1 + 2 becomes 3's infinity. Semen salt rolling rains colossal collision. The Big Bang's nursery rhyme when a spoon makes love to the dish. Yes, sex evolves. Male protozoa grow Air Jordan like a Christian fish. Toes in the sand, slapped on the back of Darwin's minivan.
Dude. Darwin, cruising out on Darwin's minivan.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Beautiful, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Is there anywhere that people can find more of your poetry? Or
I
your
wish there
offerings
was.
at
I
this
kind of got to
point?
fix that.
Hey, we're gonna wake farm up. I'll help any way we can. Love you. And there's there's gonna be a piece coming out sometime here from the Pawpaw Festival for the community here. Love you.
Peace out. Thank you.
Help out for now. Hey, signature. Again, the doctrine of signatures. You guys familiar with the doctrine of signatures? It's a whole sign system that is in the biological world. It's often frowned on because it's not always correct or something like that. But, you know, it's all poetic. It's very interpretive. I mean, you got to look at the different words too, like the word doctrine, you know, like does usually kind of come with a heavy set of things, but it's kind of it's a set of principles or concept of principles that kind of can be worked together. So the doctrine of signatures is when plants are communicating a sign of corresponding parts. So something that's like similar to our brain will be a walnut, and that walnut will have an oil in it, which is really good for your brain. You following me? You know what I'm saying? That your guys' brain's working. You need some like some of that walnut oil in there. Feeling good? So yeah, signatures. I mean, that's a whole nother one. Signatures breaks up two words, sign and nature. So, you know, chew on that for a minute. Tell us what your name is, buddy.
My name's Rich.
Here, let's check this mic first. I want to make sure this is coming through. So that should be. I think I got it set to a. Try that.
My name's Rich.
Hey, that's wealthy. That's wealthy, full of sound.
Isn't it weird that like pawpaws are one of the few plants that can grow under black walnut trees?
Yeah, this is very true. And, you know, the black walnut trees, they're known as being allelopathic, and they exude a chemical under their soil. Again, that's like plants communicating, and they do that to communicate to certain plant families to, hey, I'm growing here, and if you don't like this, you know, why don't you go move out somewhere, you know, like we're going to move in and do our black walnut thing because some squirrels planted us here. It's amazing, like the way that plants in the whole world, like just like how they interact with mycorrhizae, all these things. And we're living in this time period right now where new forests are developing and growing that never existed before, with plants from all around the world mixing up into these environments. And it's, you know, so sometimes we'll observe some plants coming in being very aggressive at moving other plants out. Sometimes we'll see that they're really calling to people. I think the most aggressive plant that exists in our country is soybeans. It gets people spraying them to like kill all the other plants around them, right? This is the most invasive plant. It gets into people's heads and it attacks our greed. It's like, oh, it's the easiest cash crop in America right now. You know, it's like, okay, I can stock up on this. And the whole time the bean just has this name where it's just trying to say, I am a bean. And it's just mind-blowing to me how much soybean is being grown. Really, it's so aggressive. I'm very impressed by it. Plants work in that concept. You may have heard like that concept of the botany of desire. You know, it's like they're getting things to plant them. You know, whether they hook onto your fur or your clothes, or they hook onto your brain and your appetite and encourage you to produce more of them, if that makes sense. And I feel like, again, and along those lines, pawpaw has found its way back into the human heart, back into existing with us, where people are planting more. We're having these amazing festivals and people are getting to try it and enjoy the experience of it. And not just enjoying the experience of it, but tapping into seasonal foods. You guys familiar with seasonal foods? So oftentimes I'm approached and somebody tells me they have a certain diet, that they eat this in the morning, they eat this in the afternoon. And I ask them, is that like all year long? And that's pretty much what their idea is. Yeah, I do the same thing all year long. But we need to be shifting our diets throughout the year. There's certain times of the year where I notice I can't eat bread without my nose getting snotty. It still tastes good, but you know, it's like, that's just what happens. And I do feel like pawpaws, there's a I don't know, I've been raw food, fruitarian, all different things in my life, and I think there's something amazing about the cleanse that comes through your body when you eat nothing but pawpaws for several meals during pawpaw season. It's got nutrients in it, which one are very specific. Somebody could really get into that. For me, knowing that it is here and it's part of, the human diet for thousands of years, it makes sense to go into that, eat that, and it'll carry out certain things in our bodies, and it'll put certain things into them, getting us ready for the winter season, getting us ready for the fall, getting like this weather changing from hot in the middle of the day to cold at night. It definitely is like a little tester, and getting those pawpaw blasts into our body at this time of the year. There's other things like a lot of plants are returning their energy into their root. So like echinacea puts all its energy into its flower, and then right now at this time of the year, it sinks back down into its roots. And right now is when it's got its highest potency. There's other ones like vitamin C and MSM in the white pine trees in the February, like when the sap starts flowing, that's when their vitamin C properties are the highest. And that's the time of the year in this part of the world that we're needing more natural vitamin C's from our environment and not always getting it. We're getting what we call cabin fever, which is actually another sign of a fungus that's growing inside of us that it will even get into our neurons and influence us to eat more sugar. I mean, it's fascinating. It's called Candida albicans. And there's amazing plants that grow around here that help us with that. Spiceberry specifically has been shown to help clear out different fungal infections inside of us. And it's also been known as the friendship tea. I love that concept. I live near a town called Friendship, Indiana, which historically has always been a town of friendship. There's no historic known battlefields or anything. So it's like a friendship town where people would come together and drink spiceberry tea together. And, it's amazing, like when these like scientific things kind of like back up and connect with these folklorish kind of things. So a lot of the mycorrhizal and microbial information that's coming out there in this world right now has a lot to do with like biodynamics and some of the stuff that 100 years ago was talked about as elementals, but now what we're finding is like some of these things that were called elementals actually are these whole embodiments of microorganisms. Like they have little embodiments. I mean, it's just like fascinating over and over. I can't say like how intelligent these, like all these species are. Like grass, it's like intelligent in the way that when a browser eats it, it stimulates it to have more roots. And our lawnmowers mimic that, but they don't do the other part where they add in what? Manure. And the animals, they'll actually stump it into it. I've been involved with different festivals and have kind of observed how a stampede of humans across a landscape and how the landscape can recover after that. It's fascinating. Like, yeah, I'm glad we're not stomping our own manure into the soil while we're at the festival. I appreciate that. We function a little different than like some bison would. But
yeah, that's Matt Wilkinson. He's from New Jersey, and he's a speaker with Mother Earth News.
He's amazing. I enjoyed like messing with the plucker with him the other day and talking with him, and hearing him like presenting right now is like, he's an amazing.
He's obviously practicing permaculture in a lot of good ways. So
and he's articulating so well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been great. I mean, I hope we have all of the Mother Earth News people come back next year too, because it's been a good trial.
Nobody
so
cares
far.
what the apples look like.
That's so cool.
Comfrey, which I already showed you a picture of.
Comfrey.
Any type of mint. I have, I think, 7 different types planted already. I chose Shasta daisies. Gummies, do you know what gummies are? Yeah. They're an edible berry that's looks like the size of a grape, and it's red, and it can make jams out of it, juices, and it's popsicles. It's a pretty neat little fruit. And then gooseberries.
Nice. With the poultry.
All right, so if you're anything like me, I
think I am.
I apologize that we're similar in that I get overly enthusiastic and I want things to be done yesterday. Tasha will tell you my little hyperactivity. So when I moved to our farm, I wanted a vegetable garden immediately.
Let's go.
And I knew I shouldn't do this, but I did it anyway. So I just literally went out to an area that looked good to me, put the disc on it, the rototiller, created a garden, and then the following spring, there was a lake where I had put the vegetable garden. It flooded. And I realized that was a bad location. So I had to move everything. So I've since, my wife will deny this, but I've since matured somewhat. And I gave this orchard a lot more thought. And the maturity helped me in that there's a lot more, it's more fluid than just a vegetable garden to some extent, because you have the poultry, and then you have all the types of environment that the plants I listed need, primarily the pawpaws. So I did give this a lot more thought, and again, it looks like that's working out. So I heard that the pawpaws should be or can be spaced 8 feet. I didn't do that. I spaced them 15 feet apart. I'm not sorry I did that because I have a lot of planting room in between the pawpaws. So I accessed the space right now.
Picking up pawpaws, put them in a basket. Picking up pawpaws, put them in a basket. Picking up pawpaws, put them in a basket. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Come on, friends, let's go find them. Let's go, friends, let's go find them. Come on, friends, let's go find them. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
We still have a very similar effect, and the land recovers from it very similar as well. It's amazing that biology, how much that can, like, it can heal itself. It can heal things like the Ohio River has had so many hard hits of chemicals going into it and all kinds of things, but it still has over 180 something different species of fish living in it. That's just a fish. That's a lot more than anybody's fish farm. Have you ever been to a fish farm? You look in a tank, it'll have one species of fish. You know, I don't know how many other microbial species in there, probably a bunch. You know, everywhere we go, like, that's one of my favorite questions, like where are the boundaries between gardens and not gardens? Where does it stop? Like sure, you can put like some CDs in your garden to keep the deer out, but like when they come up to it, it's like me with my glasses off at a stop sign. Like, I didn't see it. I just smelled vegetables in here. I'm gonna eat them. And you know, same with like all these creatures, you know, they're just reading the signs. Which sign's the loudest? Like when you smell something, it's because it's the loudest smell. You could say loud, but it's the loudest smell. You're picking it up. Somebody else might not smell it. I've been in neighborhoods that have certain like chemical smells in the air. The locals there can't smell it. They've become used to it. I've been in neighborhoods where I hear the sound of the highways pick up at 6 a.m. and then they go away in the evening. Like, the people there don't notice it. I do, because I didn't live there, so I'm like experiencing it and, you know, hearing it. And sometimes we like numb ourselves to certain things. And like, if you heard a coyote in the middle of the suburb screaming at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you'd probably notice it because it would be slightly out of norm. So when you can kind of make every moment slightly out of norm, it's amazing how much more your senses start opening up. You can even try turning off one of your senses for a bit, like go into the forest with like maybe earplugs on, just feel what it feels like. You know, maybe go in blindfolded. I heard a story that was inspiring for me of a 90-year-old man who lost his sense of sight but he had spent so much time in the forest listening to it that when he could go into the forest and get situated somewhere nice, it was almost as if he could see it because he had the memory of seeing. So like internally, he would still be able to like visualize things, right? So there's so many ways that we're picking up these signs and experiencing them. Like imagine being able to see a whole entire forest without your eyes, but like really see it. I'm using a lot of words right now because that's my jam band instrument. You know, I got words. But beyond the words, there's so much more than words. There's sounds, there's facial expressions. You guys are getting to like see me like as I prance around and make different faces, and I'm getting to see your guys' faces as well. And there's so much more communicating, you know, like these people over here, they haven't even heard a whole lot about it, but they like my suspenders and I love your hat. And, you know, there's so many little interactions like that are giving signs and communication. These, like, it's like, are you guys convinced yet now, like, all, like, biological life is intelligent or what? Yeah? Yeah. I mean, I know there's always that one dog where you kind of question it. Like, I don't know about that one, though. But that's, like, I mean, they're just playing their part and having fun with it, you know, and that's that sense of humor kicks in onto it. So anybody have an example of like biological intelligence or plant intelligence that they'd want to share? I got a mic up here. I'd be totally like, I could run it to you, but yeah, we'll keep an eye on the little animal creatures. I think I might even, I think I know what's going to fit into this situation, huh? Yeah, try that microphone out and see if it doesn't squeak.
This time of year, we always really like to see the starlings flying around, making their mathematical calculations as they circle through the sky. And we always love that because it just tells you that God's talking to you through the birds.
Murmurations and yeah, I love that. See, he knows they're calculating their routes. These birds are flying hundreds of thousands of miles to go back to somewhere they were the year before, or to go somewhere that their mom or dad told them from their nest this year. I mean, that's insane, you know? Like, check out flying squirrels. You ever seen that, like, around Halloween, that classic image of a moon with a witch in front of it? I don't know. I'm the kind of person that wonders where these kind of things come from. It originally came from flying squirrels and how they jumped around a lot in the fall. Those first year flying squirrels that had not got to experience the forest without leaves. Can you imagine? Like when you can jump like a flying squirrel can, and all of a sudden like all the leaves go away and it's like, wow, there's that many more places I could jump, that much more trajectory. And they would often like be seen flying past the moon and be caught actually on cameras and things like that and look just like a little witch flying by on a broom. It's kind of fascinating. It's a lot of stories that mix together into creating that story, I'm sure. You know, there's this whole other witch's broom kind of thing. And I'm more into witch's jelly. You guys familiar with witch's jelly? So that's like, it's a mushroom. There's witch's butter. There you go. Yeah, I call it witch's jelly. It's like, you know, wood ears, elf ears. There's a lot of different common names. But yeah, witch's butter. And it, you know, shows up on logs and, you know, interesting one. There's this sign that we are taught in our two-dimensional book world, right, of the 4 seasons and how, you know, it just keeps repeating itself over. But in nature, there's bigger cycles, there's smaller cycles, and there's a lot of different cycles. I could think of one as like the 13-year cicadas, you know, they don't come every 4 seasons or whatever, you know, it's like there's this different thing. And the mushrooms are doing that too. When you watch like all the ash trees die, it creates a food for certain mushrooms for a certain time period. And then it changes. And then it changes again. So like when the witch's butter comes, you better eat that because it's a good mushroom for your brain neuron in that time period. And it might not be back around for another 6 years in that kind of abundance. And there's a reason why it came in such an abundance at that time period. Not so you could start a marketing campaign of witch's butter, but so you could eat that and have that with your people, have that with your family. And like the brain neurons help you understand what else is going on, help you tune in. Are you guys ready for the 536-year cicadas? You know about those? You know about the 536-year cicadas? They're fascinating. We only know about them from reliefs on ancient temples that showed these little contraptions where you could actually hook onto them and you could ride them. I'm getting ready. I heard they're coming next year. Yeah, that is Pulp Fiction. Back to like that, you know. But like when you're making pulp, these things that you come through your mind and creative, the stories, they're all real, right? Yeah. I mean, somewhere, some galaxy somewhere, and there's a cool sound effect. So, pawpaws growing up. So I got a little sample cut here.
Ceremonial, ritualistic.
This is Chris Chmiel earlier today at the Pawpaw Festival, sharing how they communicated some signs to him.
Pawpaw this morning.
Nice.
Because I've sort of like lived that way a little bit, and getting through this festival is always like sort of intense. So this morning it was a beautiful sunrise, and I ate a pawpaw, and I just kind of communed with the pawpaw. And, thank Pawpaw for everything it's done for me. And,
when the start, this is the point where I stop the motion to make the check.
Music. What about music from other creatures and things? You guys hear birds sing? Like do you hear like music when it like gets put into rhythm? In like order, that it's a different kind of type of music than what nature's making. What nature is making is like this like space of ambience, and if you're a creature that can make a sound, or you're a tree that can like crack a branch or something, you get to do that and express it whenever you want to. You could be, like there is like certain things, like roosters like to make their rooster noises and crows make crow noises, but there's some fascinating ones like mockingbirds, they'll mix it up, and there's things that make sounds that we can't even hear with our ears too, different like little vibrations. It's like I think it'd be fascinating if you could tune in to be able to like really hear what microbials are sharing inside their little like colonies and villages where they're making themselves multiply. I mean, when you opened up the yogurt, can you imagine that if you heard that billion acidophilises started like, singing a concerto for you or something? It's fascinating.
Or if you want me to lead that story out, that's fine.
Yeah, what's up? We're still down at the Pawpaw Festival. We're just getting down with my new friend here. We're flexing, showing off our muscles. Kevin, tell us your name and about what you do a little bit, and like let's get these people here. I'm gonna get them to calm down.
Hell yeah. My name's Kevin Yunt. I'm an endangered species biologist, private contracted. I do a lot of stuff. Recently I've been doing mussel work though. And I've done like bees and bats and plants and things. But mussels are the topic of discussion tonight.
That's so cool. So do you have a muscle car?
I don't. I drive a Subaru.
Yeah, okay.
But I love my Subaru.
You can put some muscle in that.
Oh, yeah.
So when you were telling me just a moment before we stepped in here, you were recently doing a project and you were diving into which river?
The Ohio River.
The Ohio River. And
Right
you were collecting
near
freshwater mussels.
That's
All
correct.
Some people have a hard time believing that sometimes, because, me, I can connect and know for sure. But freshwater mussels, people.
They're a mysterious organism. Like when you get down to the bottom of the river, scuba diving, you're just looking at a bunch of rocks. And before you know it, you start bumping into one that has some resistance about it, and you pull it out, and it's a shelled organism, like a clam.
Like they use their bivalve foot and kind of just sink it down in there.
They dig in.
Yeah.
And in part of the surveying process, like we got to measure them. So we got to measure the species that we get.
Like how big they are, or how many there are.
Both.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
The how many, what species, how big they are. And for endangered species, we have to measure their length, width, and height.
Okay.
3 metrics versus 1 metric when you have a living mussel. But some of them, like, we'll have them on the shore measuring them, and they just start running away. That little foot comes out, and they just start scooting away,
like a
digging
line
down into
going-
the sand.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're a stone's throw from a rock in my mind. I'm surprised the fact that you're living. And then next thing you know, you're just running away from me while I'm trying to take your measurement. It's really cool.
It's interesting. They, I guess historically, were a big part of people's diets. Like, you know, when the rivers were cleaner and people were comfortable with that, and when there was more of them, I guess, like, there's not as many now. A lot of it went away with the Industrial Revolution. They're filter feeders, so they're filtering all the stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was what we were talking together off the record. We were talking briefly about the pearl industry in the Ohio Valley, the button industry, making buttons from these things.
That's right.
So a lot of these different things, you know, kind of led to this different nature on our waters, to how they survive and live. So yeah, share us some. I mean, I love that visual of feeling. I've never scuba dived down into it to look for them. I've been around people that tell me about it, and it's fascinating that you're coming and sharing that with me right now.
Oh yeah. No, the human impact that mussels have on us is something that a lot of people don't realize. Like, they're very intrinsic to indigenous cultures as well as even current. Like, the hotel clerk who I was talking with, he said that his granddad used to tell him to dive down into the river, pull up some mussels, and they'd cook them up on a fire right on the bank.
They're sandwich size, you know.
Oh yeah.
Some of those.
Culturally, they're integral. And going down into the water to see them was my first experience, actually. So I'm very new to this stuff, but I've dived before, and getting down into it, they are really just what you would think is like a living rock. Like, they just nestle themselves down in the substrate. The Ohio River has been, like, dredged. It ain't what it used to be.
That would really mess with them, I would think.
Oh yeah.
Dredging.
Well, the damming is the biggest issue.
Damn it.
So, no, don't dam it. Don't dam it. Open it up. So, the mussels, this is crazy. Their reproductive cycle is probably the craziest of any organism that I've ever experienced. And so they require a specific species of fish for every specific species of mussel. And so they live in, they sit in the gravel on the bottom of the river. The male shoots his sperm out into the water. That shit floats down. The female picks it up, gets fertilized, and then she's got these glaucidia, which is what they're called.
Glaucidia?
Yeah, it's like the womb of the mussel produces a bunch of little tiny mussels, little babes in it. Thousands of them.
Wow.
And they're hard-bodied organisms. Like, they start receiving calcium. Yeah, they're shelled.
Yeah.
But they're like spores of a mushroom. And so then the female mussel sends out a lure, is what it's called. And the lure looks like a fish, or it looks like some tentacles or something. And it gets their specific type of fish that they want to come up, bite on it, nibble it on it, and in that process, they shoot the glaucidia, the young little mussels, into the gills of the fish. And those little mussels then populate the gills of this specific fish. And they grow up filter feeding just off of what the fish is feeding. And then they crack off, fall into the dirt, and start filter feeding and do the cycle again.
Put their foot down.
Put their foot down. Boom. Yeah. And so, sturgeon are, they were responsible for like maybe 10 different species of mussels. That was the chosen fish. And so when the Ohio River became dammed up the way that it was, sturgeon operated like salmon, where they would travel upstream for their reproductive cycle just the same. And so interrupting the ability for that fish to migrate, you just excluded sturgeon from these water bodies. And so these mussels that are there no longer have the fish that they want.
No access.
And so the mussels the endangered mussels that we see,
Wow.
those are ones that are still alive from before the damming happened. These are ancient organisms. Like, some of them can live up to 100 years.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Whoa.
Long time.
Wow. And you know, so I do want to touch on, like, I think originally there was like 400 different species. I'm not exactly sure. And there's like 80 left that are in the Ohio, like freshwater in the Ohio anyway.
In the Ohio specifically, that sounds right.
And I think like 60 something of those are endemic, which means, you know, for people that don't know that word, it means that they exist there. That's where they're originally from. That's where they're native to. And that's pretty much where they exist. Nowhere else. It's not like they can go and invade some other freshwater stream unless like a sturgeon carried it there magically somehow and started flying a plane to another place. You know, maybe, I guess they could do that in some birds.
If humans moved the fish, maybe.
Birds sometimes kind of like pick up a fish maybe and like potentially could transfer some of these things.
That's the theory for a lot of how ponds get populated with fish.
I always hear
and
about
that seems absurd to me. That's always been wild to think about. But I believe it.
Yeah, little tiny things like on a heron's feet or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
No, mussel. I'm really interested to hear about the button industry and like more of the human involved processes around mussels. Because I heard that North American freshwater mussels, their shell fragments, when given to pearl-producing mussels in other countries, something about the fragment, it like is the best that you can get. What do you know about that?
I don't know a whole lot about that. I do know that some interesting weird ones, like they've only found like 3 or 4 black pearls in the Ohio River Valley when they were really into pearling. I've never ripped open one and looked for a pearl myself. I couldn't honestly tell you how to do that in the 3-dimensional real world. You know, I
can imagine how to do it, but do not do
totally,
it.
Totally.
For the general audience, do not disturb a mussel.
Yeah. It's like, 1, it's illegal, and, you know, there are repercussions for it. And 2, it's, you know, they are trying to repopulate, so just let them be so they can do that. And there is, you know, like the thing with the pearl industry in the Ohio River Valley, though, like it was in the early 1900s that they started, one, making the buttons, but also people were getting paid really good for some of these rare pearls that they were finding. So people were going down there. It was like the lottery, but you didn't have to pay $1 per scratch off, right? So you just kept cracking them open, busting them open. Hi. We're doing it right now. Yeah, we're doing it right now. We're just recording it. Oh, you can join in if you want, but yeah, we can plug it on. We should plug it in louder, but yeah, we're unofficial rebel doing this program. Wake the farm up. No, we're happy you're here.
Hear
Come
about
on.
your mussels. Hear you. Nobody showed up. Let's do a podcast.
Yeah, mussel show.
The guns are out today. It's a Friday.
Yeah, it's a private mussel show. You gotta support our Patreon. Only mussels. The only mussels show.
I'm surprised that we had someone interested in learning about freshwater mussels.
I think
that's pretty cool.
It's a very interesting topic, and yeah, I think there's a lot of unknown around it. So getting to connect with somebody like you who has gotten to go and dive actually into the Ohio River. A lot of people are really hesitant to swim into the Ohio River. I mean, to me,
justifiably.
I mean, I'm very intrigued by it. I mean, like, again, there is like 180 something species of fish in that water that's supporting some biological activity in a very healthy way.
It's rich.
It's rich.
It's a very rich area.
So tell us about some of the mussels that you did see, like any specific species. I know, like, before we were recording, we were hearing some different names. You know, we can maybe leave some of those ones out, but...
So, I'm not going to address the specific project or location that I was at for the sake of protecting these species.
No worries. Perfect. Love that.
However, we did come across several different endangered species. The area that we were at was very rich. Surprisingly, I had never dove on the Ohio River before, and I had heard a lot about it being a dangerous place, that it's murky, and that there's old cars and all this hubbub about it.
Giant fish. Well, I've heard of catfish the size of your
I did see
Volkswagen.
about a 5-foot catfish.
Wow.
Which was pretty incredible.
Yeah. That's in diameter, right?
It's a lot safer than you would think. And that was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
And that area that we were at, I think the reason that it was safe is because it was a healthy environment. And because it was a healthy environment, we did see a lot of really interesting species.
That's awesome.
Sheep nose mussel, clubfoot, fluted shell, long solid. These are different common names for these mussels.
I love their names.
I don't know the genus or the full species for them if you were to ask the Latin, but for all intents and purposes, the common names are okay. That's a cool thing about mussel biology is that the common names are pretty readily accepted, just like birds.
Yeah, like when you do bird studies, they usually have you writing down the common names anyway, which is that always intrigued me, coming from a background of doing this kind of work, mostly with plants and botany work.
Oh yeah.
And when I've started crossing over into some of the other realms, it's interesting, right? It's like, okay, we're going to use a code system based off of their common name.
Oh yeah, 4-letter words.
Yeah.
They're 4-letter codes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I come from a botany background as well.
Cool.
So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And mussels, you can call them common names. That's accepted. Scientific names also accepted. I think when it comes to data entry, you got to translate into the scientific name. But like when you're talking with mussel biologists, it's like common names totally fine. That being said, the common name aspect when it comes to plants, that is really difficult thing because these plants have a lot of different common names.
So many.
Mussels, who the fuck ever sees mussels to begin with?
Makes sense, right? Like, if I said hogweed, like you could be in 20 different states and have 20 different plants come into your mind.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at them, you're seeing them, they're in your garden. Yeah, the freshwater mussels, they're not like showing up on your nothing.
No.
Maybe like if you're into boating, maybe one sticks onto your boat or something, but...
So if you call them something, it's generally what other people are calling them, and it adds up. But identifying them, that was a huge problem for me. Like with plants, there is defining features about them that are like, this is this, can't be anything else. It has this feature,
Right.
Like a stipule on the bract of the flower, or some, I don't know, you know what the fuck.
Yeah, I love that.
But with mussels, man, they change so much. There's a whole lot of subjectivity to it, and that's a really interesting thing about the idea of them. It's cool.
I love it.
It's all time and face. It's all FaceTime with them.
Yeah, we're talking about mussels over here. If you guys want to join us, Julie, right? Yeah. Oh my god, I had like. Yeah, you do. We're gonna wrap up this mussel thing here so we can give some muscular hugs and go festivaling. Thank you so much for being here with us. Kevin has been so awesome. Do you have any links or anything you want to share with people before we hit it?
No, I'd kind of like to remain as anonymous as possible.
I love that. Like a freshwater mussel just came onto this show.
Hey, plant me back in the substrate.
All right.
Let's filter it.
Yeah, let's filter some stuff and undam it.
Undam it, man. The Ohio River's been doing.
All right, yeah, give a round of applause. There you go.
What the farm? Wake the farm up.
Tell me when we're offline.
Talking about taxonomy earlier and how it cuts everything up into little pieces. And the thing that's fascinating is like, what's the opposite of that when it's all one? There's this whole like energetic thing happening. You know, it's like people like to refer to it as the Gaia concept, you know, where Gaia is one living organism and we're all parts of it. And you can go macro or micro with that. And like, I like to point out that they're showing that there's about 14 trillion microorganisms cruising around with you right now. 14 trillion of them.
It may actually be estimated at 4 trillion.
14, I mean, that's like, you're like cruising around like a spaceship. Like you really are carrying a lot of life, and they're all sharing signs and communication with each other. Yeah. Signs, you know, like some of us go and look for oracles, and we go down to the tarot booth and try to get a card reading, you know, to like see some sort of, you know, presentation to us, you know, that'll help us sort out the future. Or maybe we'll go and check our astrology in the newspaper and see what the astrology writer, like, you know, wrote that day about it. Hey, Fitz.
They don't have to be pretty.
Yeah.
They don't have
I hope
to
you
be
got some
perfect.
good
So
stuff.
that
It looked like you were interviewing another guy.
So that's why I chose cycles.
Yeah, he was a freshwater mussel.
So that's on the outer side,
Cool.
and then the orchard measures wide 33 and some change by 92.
But yeah, that's the kind of thing I could do. Like,
So that's the area I gave you.
Would be able to put together like the little podcast lounger a little bit even better next year.
Okay, so that's a picture.
Even talked to a couple of the other people that I met here that were doing podcasts about collaborating on it, holding the space too. Just like, I don't know, I'm a collaborative person. I know some people like, no, just me or something. That's cool, but like, I don't know if I can figure something out like that between now and next year. We got time.
Yeah,
And then you see the comfrey, and then poking out in the middle is the pawpaw. Can you make that out?
Really, you got a really cool fan here who really wants to talk into the microphone, say something like, she wants to say Pawpaw Man?
Pawpaw Man.
Pawpaw Man! Where's that Pawpaw Man at?
That's right. You were saying something about the feeling of vibrations. The other day I had a sniffle when I went into work and I had to play with some bees for the day.
Oh yeah.
About 30 minutes later, I was feeling a lot better, and I blame all the bees for healing me up. Perfect vibrations for healing the human.
Blame the bees for healing you. That's cool. Most of the time people be running around like, the bees made me feel spicy and stuff. But I think I'm over that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Most people be like complaining about bees stinging them, or they be like, give me some honey.
Yeah, we won't go down that rabbit hole though, because flies be pollinating pawpaws and we're at the Pawpaw Festival.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Elf, back to it.
Blues, New York hip-hop, salsa, East Coast hardcore, and especially old-school dub reggae production. Yep. Cultivated Mind continues to push the boundaries of the reggae and dub genres while simultaneously embracing and respecting the traditions from which they came. Ladies and gentlemen, Cultivated Mind! Folks, one more time for the MC, Mr. Andy, yeah? Please make some noise for Brian and the whole crew for this amazing festival, yeah? And one time for Fruition! That was a member of the show, man. Thanks for those who stuck around. If you don't know what I do, I have a recording device on my feet. I loop. Everything you hear is made in real time. I don't use backing tracks or pre-recorded loops or anything to make at home in my underwear eating Cheetos, nothing like that. So it is a process, not a product, so to speak. If it lands, it sounds cool. If it doesn't, we all hurt together. Let's give it a whirl, yeah? That's the confidence you want, right?
idea. So, with this whole like concept, with everything becoming one, and this Gaian mind concept, like how can we accept that other things are intelligent, have their thoughts, have their feels? I think a lot of it has to do with the way we're thinking. When I was trained at a younger age to go out and cut down bush honeysuckle and I do projects where I clear out invasive plants. But I think the difference, when I was younger, I was taught like, let's go to battle with them, like let's hate them. Ultimately is what I was being trained in. And when you go to harvest your lettuce, you're not looking at your head of lettuce like, I'm gonna cut your head off because I hate you. You're not supposed to be here. You're not from this spot. It's like, so you go out, you cut your head of lettuce, and you're like, thank you, this is really cool. You go out, you cut your invasive plants, like, thank you, this is really cool. If you weren't here, I don't know what would be happening right now. Something else, but, this is what is happening. Like these gifts of nature, they keep coming around and planting themselves. We'll find out why sometimes later, but their signs are showing that if you trust in nature, it's going to communicate and take care of you pretty good. There's a lot of things in nature, and really tuning in and getting to know that wisdom sometimes is challenging and it takes time, but we got to start somewhere, and maybe 1,000 years from now, we'll be really appreciating having a planet that we don't need a spacesuit to exist on. That's one of the most fascinating parts about this planet. I love being able to exist without a spacesuit other than my flesh suit, which is made up out of it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you do. You guys got any cool, you guys have some deep thoughts coming. I can see these little bubbles, their signs are showing deep thoughts. You could just agree, or do you want to share anything on the mic?
Like we were talking about, having a water level over your fruit, like when you're making sauerkraut. If you haven't made sauerkraut, you take your cabbage, you shred it up good, stick it in a crock, you beat it with a wood hammer basically until it releases enough juice to cover it. You put all your salt in there, and boom, you got sauerkraut in about 14 days. You can do that with pawpaw. Just mix your fruit in with salt. If it doesn't have enough water, because maybe it's unripe or there's not enough juices in it, put a little bit of water in there. It's going to be okay. Just make sure you take in the water into account, the weight of the water and your salt, and you're good. That salt acts as an oxygen barrier. Is it perfect? No, because oxygen dissolves in water. But is it going to do a good enough job for you? Yes. So lactic ferments make a lot of things. They make yogurt, they make salsas, they make umboshis, they make a lot, actually in the next slide I'm going to get into more of that. So when you're doing your lactic ferments, temperature matters. Basically, if you're comfortable, it's comfortable. Over 95 degrees, you start running into problems. Less than 50 degrees, you start running into problems. Right around room temp, it's really ideal for a lot of these ferments. So stick in your kitchen, stick it in a cupboard. Somewhere dark is usually pretty good too. If you are using a gallon jug or a jar, you can put a balloon on top or some type of rubber or something to help keep the oxygen out even more, but it will make CO2, and you will have to off-gas that or else it will shoot off. So unless you have a home fermentation strain, then it won't. But if you see it start blowing up, just off-gas it a little bit, you'll be okay. For making pawpaw ferment anything, whether it's mead, which is honey plus the pawpaw fruit plus some sugar, or whether it's beer where you're just tossing in the pawpaw, or it's pawpaw wine where you're just literally mixing water and pawpaw and sugar and yeast and fermenting that, you need to get some yeast nutrient. Otherwise, this is not going to be as good as it's going to be. You can use baker's yeast, which is what you buy, Fleischmann's baker's yeast, and it'll make a good product, but getting yeast nutrients is really important, and keeping it at the right temperature is really important, especially for alcohol fermentation. And time is your friend here. Okay, the longer you wait, the better it's going to get. Alcohol gets better with time, and that's especially true with pawpaw wine. So if it doesn't quite taste good yet to you, wait a year. What's the hurry, right? There's plenty of alcohol you can go buy from, Jackie O's or the local craft.
This is Brett Kollman Baker of Urban Artifact Brewery in Cincinnati, Ohio, out at the Pawpaw Fest.
Acid bacteria. So this is actually where we do want oxygen. And the easiest way to make vinegar, especially with pawpaws, is take your pawpaw skins and scraps. Still don't use the seeds unless you're willing to roll the dice. Mix it in with some water and some sugar, which on the next slide I have the ratio of it. Oh no, it's right there. 1.5 pounds per gallon of water. Scale it as you need. Add some yeast. Keep it in an open top mason jar. Don't put the lid on it, and just let it ferment. It'll ferment. It'll ferment, and then after a couple weeks, if you want, you can kill off that yeast by gently heating it to 160. But you don't have to do that step. And then inoculate with acetic acid bacteria. Your best bet at getting a good vinegar is doing that. You don't have to. You can wait, and maybe you'll get there eventually. But get some nice vinegar at the store that's not pasteurized, and just dump a little bit of that in. Boom, you'll have good pawpaw vinegar in a couple weeks. And if you're making hot sauce, just add some peppers. Do this whole process, but plug peppers in right there as well. And all of a sudden you got hot sauce.
Pawpaw fire.
You know, these are conversations that go on forever, and I definitely want to invite you to connect with the Wake the Farm Up podcast. Connect in, you know, maybe you'll be on the show, maybe you'll be on the microphone. I'll be here going around the Pawpaw Festival, connecting with people. There's a lot of amazing stories here. The wind will blow stories in, and sometimes the wind will come and take stories too. So, you know, think about that. That's some more signs and connections. We'll talk about that word again, semiosis, biosemiosis. It's a whole realm that is deep, not that well explored. You know, I've had several people come by here before the presentation. They said, what is that? So you guys kind of have an idea a little bit more now. There's a lot of people sharing and writing about semiosis out there. There's a fascinating book even out there about it where they dive into the topic by exploring another planet, and the other planet has plants that are very sentient. That's another kind of word in this concept, you know, like these other creatures and animals are sentient, you know. Like not just your dog loves to see you when you wake up and go to work in the morning. The trees that you walk past every single day, they're picking up memory vibrations from you. They're connecting with you. I keep going into the pawpaws. It's probably my favorite plant to talk about. It's a perfect place to do it.
Take my soul straight from me now. I'll be headed for a mess like a crash test. Hurry, hurry, hurry. So I missed it. I'm asking the question. What reason without your intentions?
Some of these signs, you know, they grow as colony root. They'll share roots. So you could be somewhere where massive amounts of them, and they're just one tree. Somebody might be like, why aren't they pollinating? I might need to bring in meat or something. But really, maybe you just need to bring in some seeds from another patch. And again, that's a sign where people are connecting with these plants and doing service for them. That's how intelligent they are. Like, these plants are intelligent. Like I mentioned, the soybean. Look at how intelligent they are. They have whole task forces working for them. Look at marijuana. Look at how much marketing it's got, like how much of a fund it has to go into research that plant, to show us what all its different properties are, its little constituents, and how to grow it this way, that way. I mean, imagine if we had that for all the amazing herbs that were out there. It is such a gateway herb. It'll open you up to all these other herbs that don't have. You know, like, how much do you think lemon balm, maybe there's a lemon balm society out there and they donate like $14 a year or something to promoting it or something, you know what I mean? That's not like, it's not opening the doors. It's not, but it's there. And the other thing that I want you guys to remember too, no matter how inflation prices keep going up, and that might make us feel like inflammation and all that stuff, but no matter how high it goes up, dandelions are still the same price. I mean, pawpaw prices have gone up, but you guys know where they grow, huh? Like, yeah, it's still, but you know, it's still there, you know? And keep that connection. That's like in our humanity, you know, keeping our connection with these things around us and knowing what they are. Most kids these days can recognize over 1,000 logos, but not 10 plants that grow around them. It's up to us to show these kids what's around them. It's up to us to show ourselves too, and then remember we're all trying to find our way there, you know, trying to find our way somewhere. You know, the other thing is fascinating I've been thinking about, like, so during the Great Depression, did they call it the Great Depression during the Depression? I'm not even actually sure about that, but we always hear about how like so-and-so's Grammy or Pawpaw was like foraging during the Great Depression and they knew what to do. Like, I don't know, like if you look at the numbers of things, I think we're probably like facing more poverty situation than they were financially anyway. And possibly maybe we were already in it. So that's another reason why we're so joyful about things like pawpaws, and people are joyfully Instagramming pictures of things they foraged. And I'm always like, yes, please show me a picture of your dinner. I need to see it. And, you know, when the internet goes down, I just don't know what to do. But I have some descriptions of people's dinners and stuff written down so I could read them and just like visualize it inside, you know, if I need to have that experience. I'm just like joking a little bit. I don't need that experience, but it's fun, right? I love
say stuff. Right now is when you say stuff. They're finding the key.
Radiating off of me and everything here.
The sun is changing the tune of their instrument. It's hot.
To see what you guys make for dinner sometimes, sure, but I think part of it is, you know, like there is that cute, whimsical, fun part of taking a picture of a chanterelle, but to remember that deep, sacred connection between us and the earth. We don't need a wristband to be our animal selves. We don't need like a special pass or a certification to be an earth creature. You already are, and you're here. You just need to keep connecting with the wisdom and knowledge on how to do that. You know, sometimes it might not be comfortable, but hey, I'd rather be a free man in my grave than be living as a puppet as a slave. You know what I'm saying? That's some like hanging on the cliff stuff right there. You know, there's a lot of respect in a lot of this. You know, it goes back further than the flat screens. You know, it goes back to flat books even. Like when people started valuing what was in the books more so than what was like out here in the three-dimensional real world. You know what I'm saying? And it's like these people, they started studying back in the 1500s books that were written by people who wrote them from the three-dimensional world. This is like 500 years ago. Now you got people who have read books that were written by people who read books, who were written by people who read books. And now it gets even better. We get this fun new technology twist of AI, where we got AI that are reading books, and the AIs are actually generating books themselves now. And give it a few more years, like think about the books in 10 years when AIs are writing books that they're, you know, getting information from books written by AIs, and, you know, it just trickles down even further to like maybe somewhere back in the 14th century, there was somebody that wrote down about it from their actual three-dimensional experience, right? So So I definitely want to encourage you all to get out there in the school of hard knocks and, get your hands in the three-dimensional world. It's one thing to read about mycorrhizae. It's another to put your hands in it and touch it and smell it and feel what it's teaching you. There's information that doesn't come in words. I'm going to close it with that. You know what I'm saying?
So I know this was a lot of information. I know there wasn't a lot of concrete stuff here, so hopefully it was entertaining. And hopefully you learned, at least it got inspired a little bit. Now, if you want any recommendations...
I'm going to close it with that. You know what I'm saying? I can't hear you.
What the farm?
You guys rock. Come up here, get one of these free Wake the Farm Up stickers. They're free today. Once again, they're usually $500 a piece, but just think of the savings. You can take 2 or 3 and give them to a friend or an enemy. Make a friend out of them.
Picking up small bones, put them in a basket.
That was awesome.
Pawpaw, put it in a basket. Push it up, pawpaw, put them in a basket. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
Yes, that wraps up and concludes our episode. But now we have a bonus track of Elf DJ mixing it up for you. This is some of the soundtrack from the show, mixed up in a whole fresh way. This was created while at the festival in the Mother Earth News tent early Friday evening.
Wake the farm up.
Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
We're going to talk about some pawpaw permaculture.
Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
We're going to talk about some pawpaw permaculture.
Wake the farm up. Wake the farm up. Wake the farm up.
Some pawpaw permaculture.
What the
farm? Some pawpaw permaculture.
basket, picking up pawpaw, put it in a basket, picking up pawpaw, put it in a basket, way down yonder in the pawpaw patch. Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch.
We're going to talk about some Pawpaw Permaculture.
Are you seeing the signs? Hearing the signs? Are you receiving the signal? Are you receiving the signs of nature, the signatures? Are you reading the signs? Look at it. It's the semiosis, the semiotics. It's not always verbal communication in which you receive the message. It comes in other forms. Pawpaws know that. They have a lot to communicate.
Farm up.
Are you seeing the signs? Hearing the signs? Are you receiving the signal? Are you receiving the signs of nature, the signatures? Are you reading the sign? Look at it. It's the semiosis, the semiotics. It's not always verbal communication in which you receive the message. It comes in other forms. And pawpaws know that. They have a lot to communicate. know that they have a lot to communicate. And pawpaws know that they have a lot to communicate. Biological intelligence, BI. They are watching out for you.
Wake the farm up.
Clean that seed. Clean that seed. Clean that seed. That's the key. You can't have too much pulp on the seed. That'll disqualify you.
Oh wow, seed from Columbus down here. Making some progress.
That's how I eat them at home too.
Okay, we're getting, the pulp is disappearing. Now it's time to get those seeds clean.
I'm not running You dirty details of what's going on.
Okay, I see. This is some people are focusing on the pulp first. Some people on the seeds. We have different techniques here.
Shut the farm up.